It's story time, and this is going to get really, really weird, so buckle up and be ready to be shocked, surprised, and even triggered. Also, if you're one of my Romanian viewers, there's a few of you out here, I need your help, so stick around to find out why. But basically, in episode 20 of my Stalingrad series, I quoted an NKVD report from Glantz's book talking about how a female Russian submachine gunner called Volodina was fighting for the German 71st Infantry Division at Stalingrad. During the battle for the NKVD building on 15th September, a woman calling herself Volodina, who spoke the German language and was actively taking part in combat as an automatic weapons man on the German side, was taken prisoner. Because she was wounded, the situation did not permit interrogation, and our worker shot Volodina. I knew this would cause controversy, which is why I made sure to put it in there. And as expected, there were a few Russian and German patriots who were either outright denying it, claiming it was propaganda, claiming she wasn't Russian, claiming she wasn't a combatant but an intelligence officer or spy, or they just didn't believe the report. So I wanted to get to the bottom of this. I've also started on the scripts for the next couple of episodes of the Stalingrad series, and I came across a few interesting sentences in Egor Kobiakov's articles on the subject. In the article about the Stalingrad grain elevator, Kobiakov says that on the 19th of September 1942, the attacks continued until darkness. This time, after an artillery raid, the Germans drove Romanian units into battle, but again to no avail. And then later, Andrei Kazyanov was seriously wounded during the breakthrough from the surrounded elevator and was captured by Romanians. Yes, I got triggered too. From what I was told and from what I can see, there shouldn't have been any Romanians in Stalingrad itself. I've always subscribed to the view that the Croatian Legion was the only non-German Axis unit to participate in the city fight prior to Operation Uranus. So seeing an account saying that Romanians were there too was a bit of a shock. I therefore emailed Anton Joly asking, but is this really the case? Did Romanian units attack the grain elevator, and if so, what units were they? What was the primary source saying this, and did Romanian troops participate in other areas of the city fight too? Anton messaged me saying he thought it was strange as well. He therefore contacted Egor Kobiakov, who said he was relying on the memoirs of two Soviet soldiers, one Pavlenko, who was from the 35th Guards Rifle Division, and Kazyanov from 92nd Rifle Brigade, who claimed he was captured by the Romanians. Anton said, but this is doubtful. You're right to point it out, and personally I was very surprised as well to learn there could have been Romanians in the city at this time. Neither German nor Soviet documents confirm the participation of Romanians in the fighting for the Voroshilovsky sector at this date. And in the post-war correspondence of eyewitnesses of the events, there were also disagreements about the participation of Romanians. For example, the Chief of Staff of 92nd SBR, Emelianenko, wrote that there were no Romanians near the elevator and that Pavlenko was lying. In the post-war discussion of the episode of the defence of the elevator between veterans, there were many harsh conversations about who defended what. Obviously we've got a couple of problems here, but what's also intriguing is this. Egor also thinks that in October, to reinforce the Germans in the city, Turkestan battalions were attached, recruited from the composition of former Soviet citizens of the Caucasian republics, Georgians, Armenians, etc., and of course the well-known Croatian regiment. The plot thickens, I replied. I'd be very interested to hear about the possible attached Turkestan battalions. This is especially so because in the previous episode I mentioned the automatic machine gunner called Volodina fighting for the Germans. Well, people complained and questioned me about that, stating that it was Soviet propaganda and that it was probably an exaggeration by the NKVD. However, if there's a possibility of Turkestan battalions taking part in the fighting at Stalingrad, and if there's some evidence to support this idea, then potentially the issue with Volodina might not be as far-fetched as some think it is. So you can see my reasoning here. Potentially, if there were Turkestan battalions helping out the Germans in October, then maybe one of these battalions entered the battle earlier, and maybe Volodina came from one of those battalions. If this is true, it could also be the case that Kazyanov surrendered to a Turkestan battalion rather than a Romanian one. Maybe they were armed with Romanian weapons for some reason, and this just confused him. You can see that there's a lot of potential here, and also a few different possibilities. There's also a potential pitfall. It could all be rubbish. For starters, we need more than just memoirs or hearsay to confirm that the Turkestan or Romanian battalions participated in the city fight. And even if we confirm this, that wouldn't explain why Volodina was speaking German. So there would still be a question mark relating to her. Anyway, Egor replied to Anton Joly saying that a report from the 51st Army Corps on the 25th of September 1942 confirms that Hiwi units, mostly Ukrainian, were fighting with some of the German divisions in Stalingrad. I asked Anton to verify this, not that I doubt Egor, but I know some of you will, and Egor sent the full report, including the report's code number shown here, so if there's any complaints about this, feel free to go and look up the report yourself. The report reads, Local Volunteer Formations Report. In response to a radiogram of an army group dated the 14th of September 1942, secret, to High Command of Army Group B. The Army has at its disposal the following formations of volunteer local assistance. There is no data from the 14th Panzer or 11th Army Corps. 1 Appendix, signed Chief of Staff of the Army. This is just a Google translated version of the report from Russian, so it's not ideal, although I think it conveys the message. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's clear that the 6th Army was using Hiwis in combat. So just to give a couple of examples, the first unit on the list, the 6th Ukrainian Battalion, was armed with numerous Russian and German weapons. But it does say at the end, due to the shortage of German personnel and lack of training, the battalion is not used in combat. There are other units in the list which specifically say that they had not entered combat at this time, but there's other ones that don't say this, implying that they had been used in combat and would be used in combat. The second unit in the list was a security company in 48th Panzer Corps, and it is noted that the unit performed very well, again suggesting that it had taken part in combat. The note for the 7th unit says, the Russian platoon is doing well and setting up defensive positions. This suggests that it had participated in defensive combat. Now, most of these units were in the 17th Army Corps for some reason, and the report does note that the report doesn't contain information about 14th Panzer and 11th Army Corps, so we can assume that they had some of these combat units too. As we know, 94th Infantry Division was the one fighting for the grain elevator. Well, there were 2 Ukrainian units attached to the division at Stalingrad at this time. These were a Ukrainian construction company and a platoon of specialists. The construction company had 174 personnel with 90 rifles, and there was only 23 Germans in the unit. So was it 90 rifles for 23 Germans? No, clearly the Germans were using Hiwis on the front line, and they were also armed, which is contrary to some of the commenters who doubted that Hiwis were armed or used in combat at Stalingrad. Hiwis weren't just being used as ammunition carriers, as some have insisted, but were actually armed and used in combat. It even notes that the unit performed well. The Ukrainian platoon of specialists had 86 men. Of these, 10 were German personnel, and the unit had 32 rifles, clearly indicating that the Ukrainians were armed, and again, the unit performed well. The 295th Infantry Division also had 1 Ukrainian Guard company, and it is noted volunteers will immediately execute all commands. Then there was another platoon of specialists, this time armed with a Russian machine gun, 5 German carbines, 25 Soviet rifles, and again most of the personnel were non-German. This one notes, used as a platoon of repairmen and gunsmiths in a division's repair company. Now, in this list, there's no information from the 71st Infantry Division, or from 51st Army Corps, or other corps or divisions, so it certainly isn't a complete list. There's nothing in it to say that these units definitely fought on the front line at Stalingrad, although I would say it was a distinct possibility since they were with the divisions that participated in the fighting at Stalingrad. Maybe there weren't large numbers of them, but at the very least, this report confirms the idea that Hiwis were armed at Stalingrad. Again, some people said they weren't, but they clearly were. And we have to consider the idea that if they were willing to set up separate platoons, companies, and battalions of Russian, Cossack, and Ukrainian volunteers that were attached to their divisions and corps, then what's the chances that they also had some Hiwi volunteers inside their divisions too, helping out with the frontline combat? Is it possible that some of their divisional Hiwis were armed? It's clearly not beyond the realm of possibility, even if we don't currently have direct evidence of it right now, because we have evidence that Hiwi units were armed and were in the Stalingrad area. You know, and I think this is a great example of how people are a little too quick to dismiss an idea, or even the person presenting the idea, without having considered the possibility that it could actually be true, and that there could be evidence out there to confirm it. So guys, if you have doubted me before, maybe you should go back and watch those videos you dismissed and actually listen to what I'm saying, because I do back up what I'm saying with evidence, and I do present ideas that are grounded in reality. As I mentioned, some insisted that Hiwis weren't used in frontline combat, or if they were, only in the West. In response to someone else, Kerry said that they were only used as security units in the East. I'm afraid that this is simply incorrect. The Germans used Hiwis or had Eastern volunteer units fighting the Red Army with them, and there's plenty of evidence of that. The only question was whether such units existed as early as 1942, or whether they were used at Stalingrad. Now we have evidence saying that they did. Of course, other commenters weren't happy accepting the idea that the Germans recruited Russians, and especially females, to fight for them. Volodina said, "The Germans allowing Russians to fight for them at best is doubtful. Had the woman in question been collectivized by Russians, or had family members murdered by the Russians, it's entirely possible that she, on her own accord, picked up a weapon to exact revenge on those who that had persecuted her and or her family. Hell has no fury than a woman scorned." You know, I don't know why you would come to this conclusion. Do you think that the Russians just casually walk around terrorizing women all day? Is that their pastime, is it? Yes, the Red Army did terrible things to women during the Russian Civil War, and they did terrible things to Axis women when they got to their territories. But you can't seriously be arguing that they marched around their own territory murdering and pillaging all day. Come on. You know, and I hope this video will make you reconsider your stance, Denny. Also, based on the information presented so far, I think it's fair to say that some of the commenters in previous videos, who were given anecdotal evidence of Hiwis being in combat at Stalingrad, may not have been wrong. As this viewer said, "At Tick, I spoke to one of the veterans who participated in urban combat in Stalingrad. He said in one of the fights, they had to storm a building which was occupied by Russian speakers but dressed in German uniforms. The building was taken with no prisoners." Obviously there's no way to confirm whether this particular action happened or not, but it no longer looks as far-fetched as perhaps it would seem at first glance. And I'm sure people will argue that I shouldn't believe some random person on the internet. Yeah, I get that, since people can make up anything and pretend to be people who they're not. But then there are people who say things that I'm inclined to believe, such as this guy who said his grandfather fought at Stalingrad. He updated his comment to say that he received a concussion, which isn't surprising considering he was part of the 196th Rifle Division, the division practically wiped out earlier in the series. Yes, he could be making it up, but if he is, it's a very specific thing to lie about, and I'm not sure when you started watching this series, Anton, but if you skip the first 18 videos of the series, the bit before the city fight began, you really need to go back and watch the series from the beginning, because that's where you'll find and see the 196th Rifle Division in action. And I'm saying that because it's obvious to me by looking at the views that people are just skipping to the beginning of the city fight. I understand why, because that's probably the exciting part in people's minds, but in actuality I think the pre-battle period is more important and perhaps just as exciting as the city fight. If you've skipped the beginning of the series, you're going to have a warped view of the battle. And another viewer said, it was widely known for a long time that Soviets employed many women in support and leadership roles on the Eastern Front, but now I know that Germans deployed Russian women as frontline assault troops as well. Wow, that's something unexpected. Well, this may be jumping the gun a little. Thus, we have evidence that Hiwis were armed at Stalingrad and probably took part in the fighting. But was Volodina one of them? According to Egor Kobiakov, probably not. The case of the captured Volodina, who spoke German and participated as a submachine gunman from the report of the NKVD, interested me at one time. The case is rather unusual. But the Turkestan battalions have nothing to do with it. They were attached to the German divisions partly at the beginning of November and partly already in December. There are two options in my opinion. The first, in the 6th Army already in September, there were Hiwi formations, mostly Ukrainians by the way, quite well armed, which were the units we've just been through, and Egor says that there weren't any women in these formations. Therefore, he says, I am leaning towards the second option, the case with Volodina. This is an example of actions probably unsuccessful since she was caught by intelligence agents from the German side. Both from our side and from the German side, local residents participated in the hostilities. These examples are by no means isolated. They took part not only as scouts, although this was the main occupation, but for example as target gunners, the so-called rocket men. He lists several well-known examples, including Sasha Filipov, whom I called Saka because that's how some people spell it in English, but viewers told me it was pronounced Sasha, so I will now pronounce it Sasha from now on. Thanks guys for the pronunciation help. And he even provides an excerpt from a book I've not heard of until now by a battalion commander from the 71st Infantry Division, which says that the Germans set up a well-developed agent network in the area. I'm not going to read these passages because we'll be here all day, so if you want to read it, you'll have to pause the video and go through them now. It's clear though that there were quite a few spies and couriers and so on going back and forth across enemy lines to bring intelligence information to the Germans, and there were also scouts. This is why Egor concludes, I believe that Volodina was a German intelligence agent. In mid-September there was such a mess in the centre of the city that the Germans constantly sent local residents not only to slowly cross the front line, which really did not exist, but also with offers to surrender, made confusion in the ranks of our fighters, direct aviation and artillery on target, reconnaissance, etc. As for the knowledge of the German language, there are two assumptions. Perhaps she was a teacher of German, or from the community of Volga Germans. Of course, they were resettled in advance, but perhaps not all. This is the answer to such a small question. I want to quickly say thank you to both Anton Joly and Egor Kobiakov here, because their support has been absolutely crucial to this series, and they've done a substantial amount of work that's really made this battle come alive. So thank you, both of you. A link to Egor's articles are in the description, as is Anton's channel. By the way, some people have been calling me Brad. So I think people have been seeing comments praising Brad, then thinking they meant me. No, I'm Lewis. Brad is the guy who now narrates Anton Joly's channel. Basically, people complained about Anton Joly's outrageous French accent. I can't do a French accent. So Anton got Brad to narrate a lot of his new videos for him. I think though that's a compliment to you, Brad, because people apparently think you sound like a limey pom. I don't even really know what a pom means, but I know it means a lot to people who surf all day and drink nothing but Fosters. We don't really drink Fosters! I know, mate. Calm down and go put your shrimps on your barbie. Thus, could Volodina have been a Hiwi? Or maybe a messenger or a spy for the Germans? Not sure, but the point is that she did exist, and it's likely that she did participate in the battle as a German submachine gunner or similar. Personally, it makes more sense in my head for her to have been a scout rather than a spy or a messenger, because that would explain why she was armed. Spies probably wouldn't have needed to be armed. Plus, the report did say that she was a submachine gunner, not a spy, suggesting that she was fighting for the Germans rather than spying for the Germans. But either way, those of you dismissing this need to rethink, because we do have evidence from German sources saying that Russian volunteers were used by the Germans at Stalingrad. Interestingly, Egor mentioned Turkestan battalions taking part in the Battle of Stalingrad in November and December, and I'll be pushing for more information about that. But for my Romanian viewers, this is where I need your help. As mentioned before, some Soviet riflemen who were fighting at the grain elevator at Stalingrad, including Andrei Kasyanov, claimed that they were attacked by and surrendered to Romanian forces. I was hoping that the information that Egor gave me would resolve this, but it doesn't do that, so I need you guys to look into it for me, if you can. Anton explained how there was an argument between Soviet veterans over this, and no other German or Soviet document confirms that Romanians were in the city. I also think Kasyanov's account is suspect for other reasons, which I'll talk about in episode 22. But if it can be confirmed by Romanian sources that no Romanian units participated in the Battle of Stalingrad in September, then this would resolve another problem with the grain elevator story. So I'm appealing to you guys to help us solve this. We know that the 20th Romanian Division surrendered in 1943 in the grain elevator, so Romanian units retreated into Stalingrad, but did any unit in any form participate in the city fight in September 1942? If any of you can help us figure this out, comment below, let us know, and we will be eternally grateful. I may do another addendum video at some point before the next episode of Stalingrad because I made a few mistakes. There were some good comments I would like to highlight, and people question me about the 1 rifle 2 soldiers thing. But either way, thanks for watching, bye for now.